Hi, my name is Dave, and at the time of this story, I am 41 years old. I grew up in a small mining town, and for all you readers that had a similar childhood, you may recognize my symptoms. You see, in my town, it was not socially acceptable to be intelligent, and I was. Smart kids were bullied and generally put through a living hell, so I learned to hide it. The secret was to not use big words and talk just like everyone else. I think it came as a surprise to a few people when I finished high school class valedictorian in my class of about 100. Too late, those suckers. I left town to go to college and was never going back. I was lucky that my parents broke the mold of their blue-collar background and actually encouraged and supported my ambitions. 7 years later, I graduated with honors in mining engineering and started my career. I didn't realize at the time, but 10 years of primary school had conditioned me to still hide my intelligence. After a while, I discovered it was a professional advantage. Thinking I was average intelligence lured people into a false sense of superiority until a conflict came, at which time I went for bust and won 9 times out of 10. They simply underestimated me. You're probably thinking this makes me sound arrogant and manipulative, but you're wrong. At the time of this story, I am a successful mine manager pulling down a healthy 6-figure salary with very generous bonuses. The reason for the latter was that I had taken over a struggling, break-even mine and turned it around so that it was a money factory. I had done this my way. With my blue-collar background, I had molded the entire workforce into a friendly team who shared in the mine's financial success. Everyone was happy and getting richer. 8 years into my career, I had met Tracy, swept her off her feet, and married her. At the time of this story, Tracy had given me 2 wonderful sons who are 6 and 8 years old. They are the center of my universe and my reason for life. I know I am different to other guys, where they are attracted to the physical things about women, big jugs, nice bums, etc. My first attraction is to their minds. If they aren't intelligent, I'm not interested. How do you judge intelligence? Easy. It's all in the eyes. One glance in the eyes tells the whole story. Tracy was very intelligent. The perfectly shaped jugs on a petite 5 feet 6 inches frame, topped by a pretty face, were a pure bonus. My dear wife and soulmate had a similar background to me. Her tradesman father and overbearing stay-at-home mother had provided for her well with only one character flaw. Her mother has pretty much destroyed her confidence. Her mother was a bully, plain and simple. Her father was pretty much a silent partner. What words he could get in were shot down. Tracy was thus very shy, unconfident, and had a woeful self-body image. This was unjustified, and I liked her body just fine. I had spent our courtship and married life to now trying to improve both her confidence and body image by congratulating her on her successes and worshiping her body. It was like trying to paddle a canoe against a very strong current. All married guys know this. Husbandly compliments just don't carry much weight. Her father died just after we started going out, of liver cancer. Her mother followed just 2 years ago with cancer of the everything. Unlike my parents, Tracy's hadn't encouraged her intelligence, and after high school she did a secretarial course. I met her when she was the receptionist or secretary of the mine I was working at as the undermanager. Within 2 weeks we were an item. God, I loved and respected that girl. 4 years and 2 different mines later, we were married and had our first son. Making all decisions jointly, we decided to move somewhere more civilized for raising our family. Don't get me wrong, I love the mining industry. It is rewarding and exciting, but why do they put the mines in the middle of the biggest desert around? I'd lived in some real shitholes. We managed to find one 25 minutes drive from a regional center of 100,000 people. It was scenic and a thoroughly nice place to live. We both loved it. The people were friendly and welcoming, and Tracy soon had a good support group of other mothers that met either together or in small groups almost daily. Now, I know I'm going to piss a few people off with my next statement, but hey, one of the things people like about me is my directness. The job description of mother is the highest rank in society as far as I am concerned. Higher than President, General, Secretary General of the United Nations, and every other title on earth. We are here to raise physically and mentally healthy kids. While I recognize the need for both parents to work to put food on the table in some situations, those other situations where both parents of babies work to further their careers or to be able to afford a lifestyle they don't need, I just hold in contempt. One of you should stay at home and be a parent. It's what the kid needs. Luckily, Tracy agrees, and until our youngest son, who was born shortly after our last move, started school. She was happy to be a stay-at-home mom. The problem for an intelligent person being a full-time parent is that it isn't the most intellectually stimulating job in the world. Recognizing this, I did whatever I could to keep this stimulation up. Our talks at night after the lads were in bed were precious to us. I gave her as much time away from the boys when I wasn't working as she wanted. Girls' nights out were a fortnightly occurrence at least. I looked after the lads while she did adult education courses at night or on weekends, and we got babysitters and went out together about monthly. Life was good and I was happy with my soulmate and with every other aspect of my life. The first major seed of discord started very innocently. After the lads were in bed one night, we were watching TV when they announced that they were doing an IQ test. Over the next hour and a half, they were going to ask the questions and at the end invite people to email or text in their results. It was sort of a national IQ census. They made people aware that as these tests are time-related, all writing of answers should stop at the end of the quiz. The last half hour of the show was the answers and how to work out the score. Tracy and I both agreed it would be fun and sat down together to do the test. At the end, I had a score of 136 and Tracy was 124. Both made sense to me, but Tracy wouldn't accept the results and said the test was faulty. She got quite heated about it and refused to text the results off. I was bemused to say the least. The next night, at the same time, she announced that she had found another IQ test online and had done it that day and had got a score of 132. She wanted me to do it. I sat on the couch next to her with my laptop and scored 141. Tracy was visibly agitated. Over the next month she found, and we did about 6 others. The results were generally the same, me about 5 to 15 points ahead of her. She wouldn't tell me why this was significant to her or why it upset her. I was going through a busy patch at work and didn't have the time or energy to give it much thought. One weekend, though, I forced myself to take the time to think about it. I instinctively knew it was important. I couldn't immediately think of any reason for her rancor, and it was bothering me. I have always been a fan of Arthur Conan Doyle, and through his character Sherlock Holmes, I learned his method of battling problems with no clear solution. Discount the impossible. Whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. One improbable solution, the only one I could think of, was that Tracy thought she was smarter than me, and when the test showed otherwise, she resented it. Was she harboring resentment that she, the smarter one, had been a secretary while I was the successful professional? Once I figured out the problem, the solution was clear. On our next snuggle night, I related the story of my childhood intelligence-hiding behavior. I came completely clean with her and apologized that it appeared that my behavior had become so ingrained that I seemed to have even fooled her. She seemed to take it very well, and positively even to the point of saying she could understand it. It gelled with her school life experience as well. In a way, an intelligent girl was even more socially unacceptable in small towns than a smart boy. A very sad indictment on the ethics and morals of our formative years. I thought that Heart to Heart had solved that problem. I was wrong. I didn't realize till much later that from that day on she subtly put more effort into winning our arguments than before. With our youngest, Mick, was off to school, Tracy had 6 hours a day to fill. Like a good partnership, we discussed her options. She wanted to go back to work, but I suggested something else. With such a good brain, she could go back to school. In the end, we agreed on both. She enrolled in a distance education naturopathy course and looked around for a part-time secretarial job. I would look after the kids at nights so she could study at home. I would even help out with shopping, housework, and cooking. She quickly got a part-time job as secretary to an attorney. It was 5 days a week, and she started every day after dropping the kids at school. Her boss was an old dude, near the end of his career, who was on the wind down. He only worked short hours and took a limited number of cases. There were only the 3 of them in the office, the third being a 40-something married paralegal lady with whom Tracy quickly became firm friends. The office was an old house about 20 minutes drive from home. With a small number of cases, the work was very cyclical. With no big case on, Tracy might only work 3 hours a day. With a big case on the go, she would work up to the time she had to leave to pick up the kids from school. 1 or 2 days a month she was asked if she could stay longer to help. She was happy to oblige, and if a phone call to me didn't result in me coming home early, then one to Mary, The widower next door who doubled as our babysitter fixed that. On the rare occasion she wasn't available, then Tracy reluctantly turned the overtime down. Everyone was happy. Tracy was stimulated and busy. The girls' nights continued, and our monthly date nights remained unchanged. Apart from our date nights, I didn't have much social interaction. I was either working or spending my time with Tracy and the kids. No outside hobbies, poker nights, bowling, nothing. That suited me. I had all I needed and wanted. It is 6 months after Tracy started work again. In the next hour, my life is going to detour down a bizarre path. I just didn't know it yet. She was working late. I had picked up the lads, taken them home, and started dinner. I was happy to be home early. All day, I had the feeling like I'd left the notebook on the study desk last night. The notebook contained a loose page with the results of my project and was for my eyes only. Once home, I'd found the notebook, but the list was gone. I went out to the garage, swallowed my pride, and emptied the recycle bin out on the floor. I put everything non-papery back in the bin, then started sorting through the paper. No joy in the loose paper. What about the balled-up, discarded stuff? I know for a fact that I hadn't scrunched my list up, but was it possible Tracy had found it? Whoops. If she had, it would take some explaining. I had hidden the list in the back of one of the 5 spare notepads in the desk drawer, and not the one on the top of the pile either. I started unscrunching the balls of paper still on the garage floor. There were only 6. The second one started my slide to a new, much less idyllic life. I was almost ready to dismiss it, as it was in Tracy's handwriting, when I noticed the underlined heading on a paper. I smoothed the page and read what was obviously a list. In her neat writing was: photo, voice recorder in car, home early, caught in act, phone call overheard, text message on cell phone, sleep talking, bluffed into giving something away, either admission or body language, seen in public, ratted on by friend, car scene at motel, eye contact with other person in public, hidden letters and presents, laundry. By this stage I knew what the list was. It was a list of channels on YouTube, a channel of basically stories of how spouses had been caught cheating. Tracy doesn't trust me, I thought. It was a bit of a blow, but not huge. I had my own trust issues. Why shouldn't Tracy? I had got her into YouTube account, Lost Love Chronicles. When she started studying at the start of the year, I would use some of my time after the kids were in bed to watch some of the stories on my laptop. I made no secret of it and often told Tracy if I found a particularly stimulating story. I was secretly looking for ideas on how to improve our sex life. I told her the juicy bits to try to fire her up. She started watching some as well. It must have looked real funny to see us both lying in bed. It worked, and I'd had fewer knockbacks in the last 2 months. Another thing I did was note what stories she spent a lot of time watching, then watch them myself, looking for clues on what excited her. Again, I was looking for clues on how to improve our love life. She would watch the story, and if she liked it, look at other stories by the same channel. One night she came to bed after studying and snuggled up to me, looking at the screen of my laptop. "What's that all about?" she asked. I told her it was a story about a guy who caught his wife cheating and made her pay dearly. "Why are you watching stuff like that?" she asked. I replied by asking if she had ever been cheated on, and she said no. I said I had been and described how devastated I had been. I explained that by watching other people's revenge stories it eased my lingering memories. I had never told her about being cheated on, and she asked me if I minded telling her the details. I did mind. It still hurt after all these years, but we shared everything. I had met Cindy while in my last year of university in another state. She lived in the residential college next door doing her second year of an art degree. We immediately clicked and became inseparable. We started having sex very shortly after that, but had to keep it very secret. Despite having a European name, Cindy was a second-generation removed, but full-blooded Chinese with very strict parents. Any word getting back to her parents, and she would have been removed from the residency. I didn't mention to Tracy that we had sex like rabbits all year, and it was the best sex I ever had. The next year I moved back to my home state to work. Cindy stayed behind and finished her final year, and we kept up a successful long-distance relationship. I flew up about once a month to see her. After our second year, she came and stayed with me for the summer, and I proposed. My brand new fiancé then moved 3 hours down the road to the state capital to do a 1-year diploma of education to become a teacher. With a BA, opportunities for employment in a small mining town were nil. They were, however, screaming out for teachers. She stayed at my brother's house in the state capital, but he was away most of the year on a dig. Every weekend I would drive down, or she would drive up. Being Chinese, with a strong work ethic, she also worked as a waitress in the local casino. We had also got to know a divorcee called Joe, who lived up the road from my brother's. One week while on the phone talking about the next weekend, she said she had to work on Saturday and that Joe had asked her to escort him to his company's annual dinner on Friday. Being a trustful guy, I agreed and said I would come down Saturday morning rather than Friday night. I'm still slightly embarrassed at what a naive fool I was at that age. That is what happened. We spent Saturday together until she went to work. She usually worked 5 p.m. to 9 p.m., but if they were busy, she might be asked to work till midnight. At 10 p.m., she wasn't home and I was battling to stay awake. I decided to walk to Joe's place just for the exercise. It was about 2 minutes to the end of the street, then up a 60-meter dirt driveway to Joe's place. When I approached his house, I was shocked. There in front of his house was the Alpha I had bought Cindy. There seemed to be a bit of a party going on in the house. I couldn't approach too close as there were continually people standing on the porch smoking. I was still confused as hell half an hour later when Cindy and Joe came out and walked to the car. I was hiding behind a wall very close to her car. I couldn't see them but could hear clearly. I heard her say, "Why do you keep trying to kiss me?" He mumbled something about how pretty she was. There was silence for a while. I peered over the wall. They were having a full-on tongue tango. I was stunned. I immediately went into crisis mode. This was a mode I was very familiar with. Some people, in a crisis, panic. I went into the mode cold, clinical, decisive, and calculating. I could even turn my emotions almost off with effort. It was a characteristic that had served my career well. People who are familiar with the mining industry know just how quickly harmless situations can degenerate into bedlam. Military personnel on active service and airline pilots should be familiar with it. After a minute they broke, and he asked when he could see her again. Crunch time. Before she could answer, he invited her over after dinner the next night. All 3 participants in this private charade knew full well I would be gone back to my town the following evening, but my name wasn't mentioned. Her behavior to this point was forgivable, but I would give her all the rope she needed to hang herself. Shelving the big issue, my mind turned to the immediate problem: how to get home before her. Luckily, she realized she had left her purse in his house, and they went back to get it. It was in bed, pretending to be asleep when she got there. I won't relate in as much detail the rest of the story I told Tracy, but in essence, I pretended to leave late the next afternoon just on nightfall, then returned to hide in the vacant block across the road until she drove to Joe's place. I followed her on foot, then watched through the window until they'd finished talking and foreplay on the couch and disappeared into the bedroom. Breaking into the house through an open window, I removed her copies of my debit card, MasterCard, car key, and my brother's house key from her purse. As an afterthought, I removed all the cash from her wallet as compensation for my understanding and effort. I then paused with the sounds of their sex stripping away my soul. I wondered if she was going to do her speciality. I left the house, unlocked her car, and with the engine off, backed it down to the bitumen, started the engine, and drove it to my brother's house. I locked it in the shed after removing her personal items. I then cleared all her stuff out of the house and threw it all down the back steps. Despite the late hour, I used my brother's phone to ring her mom and explained my side of the story and told her she would need to help their daughter out getting home. I locked the doors and went home. The 3 times Cindy tried to call after that, I hung up on her. I did accept a phone call from her dad apologizing for his daughter's behavior. I never saw or heard from the witch again. Tracy could tell from the emotion in my voice that I was still deeply affected by this episode and knew what my opinion on cheaters was. I went on to say that I deeply regretted not exacting more revenge at the time, and reading others over-the-top stories was somehow cathartic. We snuggled until we went to sleep. So there I was sitting on the garage floor feeling a bit sad because my wife didn't trust me. Going back to the list I kept reading: dress and behavior changes, sudden disrespect, refusing sex, hickeys, makeup awry or fresh, wet hair or smell of soap, other spouse found out and blabbed, credit card bill and phone bill, phone tap, partner bragging, caught on a girl's night out or party, talking about another person often then stopping, overhearing others talking, kids letting something slip, fellow girls' nighters seen somewhere else or letting something slip, guilty conscience, condoms and BC pills, followed to date, used rubber and empty douches, lying eyes, anonymously ratted on, pregnant, lost wedding ring, changed sexual behavior, found phone tap and cameras, found diary and phone in her car. By the time I was even halfway down this list, my heart was pounding and there was a roar in my ears. I looked back. Sloppy seconds, makeup awry or fresh, caught on a girl's night out or party, fellow girls' nighters seen somewhere else or letting something slip, BC pills, empty douches, pregnant, found diary or phone in her car. None of these made sense if they were a list of ways to check if I was cheating. They made perfect sense if you were a woman who wanted to cheat and not be caught. What the hell was going on? I immediately went into crisis mode. I finished going through the rest of the scrunched up papers, then tipped the bin out again and did the whole lot again. Nothing. The recycle bin is collected every 2 weeks, so I knew the list was recent. Tracy arrived home in time for the dinner I had made. I looked in her eyes before giving her a welcome kiss, but couldn't see anything. I forced myself out of the mode and tried to act normal. I had watched in stories that it was difficult, but every author greatly understated how hard it was. It is torture. That night, the idea of sleeping was a joke. I started by examining our partnership, looking for clues, and before I knew it, I was in the mode again. What does any crime need? Means, motive, opportunity. She had the means to do it. Item 1. Sex. Opportunity. Times I'm working and she's not. Girls' nights out, separate activities. I spent most of the time on motives. I thought back to all the stories I had watched. Most boiled down to disrespect. The quest for different experiences from a virgin bride, the hunt for a more satisfying tool, escape from an unsatisfying sex life. No solutions there. There was no reason for any disrespect. I had always treated her well and had a respectable job and income. I knew she had had half a dozen sex partners before me, so I couldn't see curiosity being a motive. An unsatisfying sex life? That struck a chord. I had a very unsatisfying one. Tracy just didn't appear to be interested in sex. By a year into our marriage, our once-a-week tumble had become boring. I had to initiate it 95% of the time and received 2 knockbacks for every success. She denied having any fantasies and denied me anything but straight sex. Don't get me wrong, she appeared to enjoy it when we did it, and I didn't stop until she'd had at least satisfied and they were genuine. I had noticed she was easier to fire up when I complimented her on parts of her body. I know she had a poor body image, but I ran out of ideas after a few months, so that had faded away. My mind wandered to that time, about a year ago, when my hopes had lifted. I had her on her stomach with my hand under her, rubbing her. I thought she might see where this was going and was waiting for her to object. To my amazement, her moans got louder. I kept it going for 5 minutes, and once again she plateaued out. With great hope for the future, I cuddled up to her, only to be told 5 minutes later that although she had enjoyed it, it was not to happen again. No, the idea of her having an affair for sex reasons just didn't make sense. Having discounted all the sex-related reasons, the only other reason I could think of, about 2 o'clock in the morning, was emotional. I thought on that. I hardly ever traveled. I spent all my free time at home with her and the kids, and I made an effort never to show that she was any less of a priority to me than the kids. I helped her with the house and kids way more than most men. Shit, I supported her in any way I could. We had lots of cuddles, talked to each other easily and deeply, and made all major decisions as a team. Sure, we didn't kiss for hours like teens, but surely we couldn't be expected to. I was still romantic. I bought her flowers and chocolates regularly and made a point of never approaching her for sex on those nights so as not to devalue the gesture. Thinking back on it, most of the time she had instigated sex was when I had done this, but it wasn't an expectation. I just couldn't think of anything. Except, discount the impossible Dave. Could she have found someone better than me? That wasn't impossible, so I couldn't discount it. If that was the case, our marriage could be in trouble. Had she already met someone? Had she already started cheating? I don't know what time I drifted off to sleep, but I woke with a start and a niggling idea. I got up and put my work clothes on and pulled the folded sheet of paper out of my pocket. Yes, I was right. The list filled the page right to the end. Was there another page? It wasn't in the bin. If it existed, where was it? I had checked the desk thoroughly yesterday looking for my list, so knew it wasn't there. Then I had an idea, went into the study and grabbed the blank pad from the top of the desk. Putting it into my work bag, I went to work. The morning round of meetings passed unusually slowly today. I was way off my game and distracted. With business on autopilot, I went back to my office and hit the internet. I started Googling, recovering impressions from paper, and followed with a few refinements. This gave me the answer I remembered. A youth spent reading detective novels finally paid off. A short trip to the hardware store, 1 bottle of graphite powder. Back in my office, I closed the door and removed the blank notebook from my bag. Following the instructions, I sprinkled the ultra-fine graphite powder over the front page of the pad. Then, very gently from the side, I blew most of it off the page. Yes, you guessed it. My guess that a second page had been written on, then removed was right. In all good detective novels, the imprint of the last page used would be indented on the next. If my blood hadn't been boiling so much, I may have laughed at the indistinct but clearly legible heading of the hidden page's writing. To do. The last 1% of doubt was removed from my mind. The second page. No photos. Check weekly for voice recorder or tracker in car. Check DSCC bills and bank statements. Never bring L home. Speak to him on the home phone or the mobile at home. Never speak to L on new phone, text only. Get second phone, leave it at work. Never in purse or car. Unreadable, first letters say. Practice being bluffed, no voice, eye, or body language responses. Don't tell anyone about him or be seen in public places. Travel separately. Don't meet anywhere close and avoid car being visible. Don't make eye contact with L in public. Tell L no letters or presents. Hickeys. Soapless showers. Don't wet hair. Douche. Check weekly not dressing or behaving differently. Maintain 4 to 5. Indistinct. Indistinct. Expect. Wear minimal makeup when going out. Check before return. Disposable panties. Pads. Warn L against bragging and talking. Go through these precautions with him. New bank account. Second phone. P.O. box. All kept at work. Find out how to check for phone taps. Monitor D's behavior for changes. Don't ever mention LS name to D or anyone else. Meet at 1 and 5 random GNOs. Never skip out on GNOs. Guilty conscience. See how it goes. Condoms. Spermicide work. Dispose and douches. Never remove rings. Write nothing down. At the bottom was what could only be called a shopping list. New BA. Phone. P.O. box. Douches. Condoms, dice, undies, pads. The cold clinicalness of this list made a mockery of the fear and anger I was feeling now. Checking my credit card and bank statements could only mean she was watching to see if I purchased any surveillance equipment. The line about being bluffed was particularly cold if I assumed she intended practicing a response to me if I accused her of anything. To arrange and pay for her tryst, she was going to set up a separate bank account and get a second phone. So I didn't see the bills and other correspondence. She was going to set up a post office box as the address for those accounts. So I never saw the second phone. It was going to be kept at her work. GNO, I could only think meant girls' nights out. What the full meaning of meet at 1 and 5 random GNOs. Never skip out on GNOs was I wasn't sure. If she didn't skip out on any nights and none of her friends were going to know about her boyfriend, then how could she meet him there? The line about condoms, douches, and spermicide hurt me more than the rest. The rest were kind of abstract and could apply to an emotional affair. These items were specific on where this was all going. It sent an involuntary shudder right down to my soul. Pregnancy would be a real issue as I had had the snip after our second child. The few indistinct and unreadable lines on the list worried me only slightly. I had enough to sink the witch already. If the hidden page was a list of cardinal rules, then she had already broken a big one. Never write anything down. I reflected on my luck at finding the crumpled sheet in the recycle bin. It made perfect sense. I had never been lucky in the small things in life. Never won a contest or a raffle. But I was lucky in the big, important things, which always seemed to fall just right for me. This was never more the case than now. So now I was faced with the age-old dilemma. Do I stop this shit now, or do I see how far it goes? I quickly discounted the first. All I'd found so far could be a theoretical exercise on her part. Challenging her now might stop it, but wouldn't tell me the fundamental reason for it all nor guarantee it wouldn't happen again. I hadn't even paused in giving Cindy enough rope to hang herself, but she had only been my second girlfriend and I had been in my 20s. Now I am 41, too old to start again. The grim, frustrating reality of my situation now almost froze me. I had coached enough of my employees through divorces to know how they worked. No-fault divorces had been entrenched for years. In a divorce, Tracy, as primary caregiver, would get the kids. As our youngest was only 6, I could look forward to custody one weekend every 2 weeks. I would also lose the house and have to pay child support and alimony. I didn't give a shit about the money, but the kids were my reason to be on this earth, the sole purpose of every breath I took. Only one certainty was in my mind at the moment. I couldn't live with a cheater. Shit, was I too late? I glanced at the list again. Who was Elle? Come on, turn off your emotions, Dave. What did I know? The list was less than 2 weeks old. She already had a boyfriend, Elle. It was 2 days from her next girls' night out. I had no idea whether or not she was working this afternoon. Could she be meeting someone now? The list showed she was being very smart in not being caught, but showed no sign that she had prepared for any consequences of being caught. She already had a boyfriend. She might already have a second phone and an untraceable source of money. She already had a boyfriend. Things were urgent, and being frozen in terror would not help. Forcing myself into the mode, I returned to rational thought. One trip would probably give me everything I needed, so I quickly planned it. I spent the next hour on the net researching and downloading. The $60 payment I charged to my company credit card. Yeah, didn't think of that, did you, witch? This was common, and I filled in the form to go to the accounts department for this amount to be deducted from my next salary payment. With a reputation for honesty to maintain, I walked into my boss's office. I simply told him I had trouble at home and would be off my game for a while. He waited for me to go into more detail, but when I didn't, he just said okay. I left an hour earlier than usual and bought a cable on the way home. In my car, I pondered how I would treat Tracy. Should I do a charm and love offensive, hoping to guilt her out of it? For the life of me, I couldn't think how to be more loving, considerate, and caring, so that was out. Should I act normal? I already knew how hard pretending normalcy would be. Now I knew she had a boyfriend, it would be harder still. Screw it. Why should I suffer? I would not act with the anger that I felt, but I wouldn't act normal. I would just be cold. If my behavior changed just enough, it may get her to pause whatever was going on and give me more time. I reminded myself that there was no evidence she had acted on anything yet. That gave me hope. When I usually got home, I would kiss Tracy first, then go to the kids. This was deliberate to demonstrate the hierarchy of my love. This time, walking in the door, I steered straight for the kids for my hugs and chatter. Sticking to the norm, I asked how their day was. Tracy, with an obvious disturbed look on her face, interrupted me and came for her hug and kiss. With a deliberate, neutral expression on my face, I kissed her on the cheek rather than the lips, then broke quickly and went back to the kids. I couldn't remember the last time I hadn't asked her how her day had been. I watched her confused expression out of the corner of my eye. I knew 2 things at that point. She should never play poker, and she would have to practice her responses to any bluff questions from me very hard. The rest of the early evening was routine, dinner, stories, bed for the kids. She reminded me about her girls' night out on Friday and confirmed I was okay to look after the kids. I stretched out the kids' bedtime till 9:15 p.m., and as soon as they were down, I announced that I was really tired and was going to bed too. This got another quizzical look from her. Being a bloke, going to bed consists of brushing teeth, having piss, putting on boxers, and getting in bed. 3 minutes tops. Girls seem to find much more to do than that, so it was 15 minutes later she joined me in bed. As I had my back turned to her, she slid in and snuggled up to me. I deliberately tensed myself and felt her answering tension. Well, witch, your list included looking out for behavioral changes in me. Could I be much clearer? I briefly pondered how I could have gone from thinking her the love of my life to a witch in just less than 24 hours. My anger answered that question for me. Honey, what's wrong? She said. Nothing, why? I replied. You've just been very detached tonight, that's all. Did you have a bad day? She asked. No, I had a good day, I answered. In all my years of marriage, I knew that was the first lie I had ever told her. She said nothing further, and being exhausted from last night's deliberations, I was asleep within minutes. I was aware that this night, it was she that tossed and turned all night. As was normal, I was up and gone before anyone else the next morning. I checked Tracy's purse, looking for the missing page. I was curious about the unreadable lines. Nothing there. She was covering her bases well. I checked her key ring. At work, I was much more on my game than yesterday. I had all my plans in place, so was able to compartmentalize my home issues into the background. I organized to take the afternoon off and drove the 40 minutes to the old suburban house that was my wife's office, arriving just after noon. I had been there a couple of times before when I was in town during work days. Forcing a smile, I walked into the reception area and asked my surprised wife if she would like to have lunch with me. Hearing my voice, her boss, Lance, came out and we chatted. He invited himself and Jenny, the paralegal, to the lunch after politely asking me if it was okay. Tracy went off to the ladies' room, the others to get their jackets. This gave me the opportunity to quickly scan the room, Tracy's desk, and particularly the external door frame. Lunch was pleasant. Yes, I'm not dumb. I know Lance starts with an L. I watched for any subliminal interaction between him and Tracy, but picked up nothing. What small talk he made that wasn't about his family was about ours or Jenny's. Besides, he was 25 years older than us. After lunch, I went back to work. At 5 p.m., I rang Tracy and, lying again, told her we'd had an incident, and I had to work late to investigate it. I stayed an hour longer than normal, then stopped at a bar on the way home for one beer. At 8 p.m., I walked in the door of home. Tracy must have seen my car in the drive as she met me at the door. Again, I avoided her lips and kissed her on the cheek. She asked me about my beer breath. I explained that I had decided to conduct the investigation in a bar to relax all the participants. I deliberately didn't make eye contact and tried to look slightly guilty. My plan was to put her into a flat spin. Both last night and tonight could be interpreted as me suspecting her of cheating or me starting to cheat. Keep your enemy on the back foot. She warmed up some dinner for me while I played with the kids. After we put them to bed, I told Tracy I was going to bed early again. I told her I wanted to get up at 3 a.m. and go to work. I did this randomly every 3 months or so, and I had explained to her why I did it. I wanted my night shift guys to know that the boss could turn up at any time. The logic was to deter a culture of safety shortcuts during the night shift when supervision was light. Tracy accepted this, and I retired without a goodnight kiss. Again, the perplexed expression on her face. I half expected her to follow me to bed, but was relieved when she didn't. I didn't hear her come to bed and neither knew or cared what she was up to. I quietly got up to my alarm at 3 a.m., packed my laptop, grabbed her keys from her handbag, left the house, and quietly drove away. Tracy would have been worried by my direction once I hit the highway. Instead of turning north to the mine, I turned south towards the city. 20 minutes later, I was parked in a residential neighborhood 3 houses up from her office. 5 minutes observation showed all was quiet. I got out of the car and walked normally up the drive to the office. Someone behaving sneakily immediately attracts attention. I used her keys to open the front door to her office. My scan of yesterday had revealed no sign of an alarm on the door or motion sensors in the room. Turning on my dim torch, I decided to check the obvious spot first, her desk drawers. Not surprisingly, the drawers were locked. Even less surprisingly, that key was also on her key ring. I unlocked them. Top drawer, stationery. Second drawer, hole punch, stapler, more stationery. I instinctively knew it would be third and bottom drawer. I noticed my heart rate elevate even further as I reached for it. After all, I had absolutely no proof as yet. My pulse was deafening me as I slid the drawer open. Manila folder files, held closed with clamps. I slid my fingers down the side of the stack of folders and felt a gap under them. I grabbed the whole stack and carefully lifted them out, putting them in the center of her desk, then shone the torch into the bottom of the drawer. I felt faint when I saw what was revealed. An iPhone 4 sitting on top of its box and a charger. Underneath the box were 2 A4 envelopes. One, with a bank logo, was the paperwork for a new bank account, opened with a balance of $200 the previous Monday. It also contained a temporary debit card. The second was the paperwork for opening a post office box and 2 keys. I noted the address as P.O. Box 58 in the suburb where her office was. I also noted the bank account number in my notebook. Strangely, under the envelope were 3 dice. A normal 6-sided 1 and 1s with 10 and 20 sides. What the hell? There was also a little stack of business-sized cards held with a rubber band. I pulled one out and turned it over. In Tracy's neat script was written, Tracy, a cell number, and in brackets underneath, text only. There were 10 of them, and what their purpose was I had no idea. At least there were no douches, condoms, spermicide, panties, or pads. Could they be somewhere else? I looked around the office. Everything else was shared property and accessed by others. Only her desk was strictly Tracy property. I concluded and hoped like hell that she hadn't progressed to needing them yet. The last item in the drawer was of course her list. The first indecipherable line from my copy was, see if D asks me for the code for my phone. The first check a husband would make on a wife suspected of cheating would be her phone. The second full line was, check weekly not dressing or behaving differently. Maintain 4 to 5 sessions with D per month. The third line was, maintain signs of respect for D and check him for signs of respect. That was obviously a reminder to herself to check herself regularly that she wasn't showing me any disrespect and to check for any sign of disrespect on my part, an obvious sign that I might have tumbled her little game. I read and reread this line, but it didn't answer a critical question of mine. Had she stopped respecting me? Sorry, stupid question. How much had she stopped respecting me? I returned everything back to the drawer except the phone. I turned that on, relieved there was no password protection, and attached it via my new cable to my laptop. The process wasn't the simple 5-minute job the website promised, but no one expects that. It was 25 minutes later that I was finished. Her phone now sported GPS tracking and a clone function. Every text to and from that phone would be copied to my work phone. Every voice call to and from that phone would send an alert to my phone. A different alert for initiated and received calls. Unfortunately, technology hadn't advanced to the stage all calls could be recorded yet, so I might miss the start of any calls. A scan of Tracy's phone would reveal my spyware, but I wasn't supposed to even know it existed. The battery would drain faster than normal, but being a different phone to her normal one. I hoped she wouldn't notice. After checking everything was back in place, I locked up and left for work. I was still in time to talk to the day shift and night shift supervisors. Back in my office, I turned on my laptop and remotely interrogated her phone. No history of send or received texts or calls. Looks like I may be in on the ground floor. I had a shower in the change room and went home for a nap. I arrived 10 minutes before Tracy left with the kids for school. I kissed her on the lips with damp hair, smelling of an unfamiliar soap. Disinformation time. She again reminded me of her girls' night tonight. I spent my nap time watching revenge stories on YouTube, scanning down to the punchline. They could be summarized as killing the spouse, planting drugs on her, or other means of proving she was an unfit mother, embarrassing her, getting her fired, or thrown in jail. The only ones I could even imagine were the ones about embarrassing her or getting her fired. But she had lost both parents to cancer, and no one else would give a shit, I thought. So what if she lost her job of 6 months? I went back to work and returned home shortly before she had to leave on her girls' night. Before I left, I again checked her new phone remotely. Nothing. I briefly thought of ringing Mary, our babysitter, and doing some spying, but quickly discounted that. She was a much closer friend to Tracy than me, and I was sure to be discovered. I was in bed when Tracy came home before midnight, and she slipped into bed. For the next 2 weeks, I kept up my cold act, drifting further and further away from Tracy emotionally. I checked her new phone activity all the way to the next girls' night. Nothing. The phone had never left her office, according to the GPS. In the last 3 weeks, neither Tracy nor I had tried to initiate sex. Me because I didn't feel like it, and her because, well, it was unusual for her to start anything anyway. When she went out 2 weeks after the start of the tension, I again stayed home like a good boy but did some serious thinking. I couldn't live like this anymore. Was my behavioral change holding her back? Let's see. When she got home, I was again in bed pretending to be asleep, but as soon as she slid in, I attacked her. You know, sexually. The next morning, she wouldn't let me out of bed, holding me in her arms. She told me to have a sleep-in while she got up to look after the boys. From then on, I went back to normal, the full Monty. She acted a bit confused for the first day, but soon got over it. Another 3 weeks, another girls' night with the mothers group, Another 3 weeks of no activity on the phone. Our quarterly bank statement did arrive, which showed irregular cash withdrawal for $100 every Friday lunchtime. Apart from that, nothing unusual. Was I missing something? Another 2 weeks, another girls' night, another fruitless monitoring effort. The only thing out of the ordinary was a call from Tracy's mobile to our house phone at 8:30 p.m. She said that they had left the restaurant and were going to a club, and she missed us. Just before she rang off, I heard her tipsy friends in the background yelling, "We miss you too, Dave." I knew that the girls' nights included dining at a restaurant and club dancing afterwards, so nothing unusual there. We had even discussed what sort of dancing was appropriate and what wasn't. What was unusual was the call itself. If I was a suspicious guy, which she had turned me into lately, then I might have thought the call was to confirm that I was at home. When we signed up to our phone plan, we could nominate 3 cells that each could phone for free. She could call from her cell to mine at no cost. Ringing our landline from her cell cost. This time when she slipped into bed later and I put my hands into her pajamas, I got a knockback. "Sorry, honey. I'm real tired. Alarm bells are ringing." The following Tuesday, I came up from underground, had a shower, went back to my office and checked my phone. I noticed the second, third, and fourth messages I had received had a strange symbol next to them. I opened the first of those and my heart immediately started to race. Oh hell, here we go again. The first diversion was a text received by her new phone. Tuesday 10 a.m. "Hey babe, loved Friday night. When can we do it again?" It was signed Friday Night Mark. Mark? So who the hell was L? The second one marked was from her phone to his. Tuesday 12 p.m. "Hi Mark, I enjoyed it too. You know I'm married and can't get there often. We'll let you know when. Trace." Tuesday 12:33 p.m. "Fine babe, you're one hot lady. Hurry back." Where was there? I would have loved to have spoken to one of her friends to see if Tracy was at a club with them all last Friday night, but couldn't see a way of getting away with that. One unthought of possibility did suddenly occur. Tracy wasn't a big drinker, and thus was always the designated driver on nights out. Could she be dropping her friends home then going somewhere else? Her return time of 11 p.m. Midnight didn't support that, but it was something to keep an eye on. I deleted all 3 texts after forwarding them to my work email, finished my day, and went home. This normalcy act was going to get hard again. The next 2 weeks passed uneventfully except for one exchange the following Wednesday and Thursday. Wednesday 6 p.m. "Hey babe, haven't forgotten me, have you? Mark." Thursday 12:45 p.m. "How can I forget a dancer like you? Haven't managed to get away since last time. Trace." Now I was confused. I'd known all week she had a girls' night this Friday. Why was she not telling him about it? I wondered also if she realized that we hadn't had a date night in 3 months. I liked dancing as well, and she'd always said I was good. I checked for messages every hour until she went out the next day and kept my phone close all evening. Nothing. Tuesday,